shown or have your image captured on YouTube, then please let Lucy know ASAP. Right, in terms of introductions then, you know all the officers, I think, don't you? I don't need to do that. Or perhaps for the people, benefit of the people who are watching on YouTube, perhaps Peter O'Brien's on my right here, he's Vice Chair of the committee, Steve Capes, Paul Wilson, Amanda Goodwill and Karen Carpenter on that side, and on my left, Rob Coggins, Simon Bainan. So, and behind me, Lucy and Tommy. Tommy's, I think, doing the photographic side of things, or the minutes, I don't know which, and then Lucy's in charge of the meeting on behalf of Democratic Services, I think, in terms of administration. So, welcome everybody. Right, we'll, without more ado, go on to apologies for absence tonight. Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Hobson and Councillor Wayne. Substituting in their absence are Councillor Edwards-Walker and Councillor Linthwaite.
Right, okay, thanks, Lucy. Right, approval of minutes of the previous meeting, pages 5 to 10 on your agendas. If you want to go through them page by page. If you have anything to raise, any objections, then speak up now. So it's pages 5 to 10. If there's no further questions or challenges to those minutes, would someone like to propose that they're a correct record? Yes, thank you, Councillor Franks. And Councillor Dobbs to second. Right, thank you. Then we move on to, we better vote first, haven't we? All in favour? Thank you. That's Nem Con, I think, probably. Oh, abstentions? Right, very good. Okay, well, Nem Con still, I think, yes. Right, item 3, to receive the minutes of subcommittee meetings. First of all, the local plan subcommittee. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move receipt of the local plan subcommittee, and in doing so, just remind members that the local plan consultation is now commenced. I hope you've all seen the consultation leaflet we've produced and the, I think, very innovative 2-minute video clip that Jim Fern has produced. So I would encourage everyone to circulate both those to your local communities. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any questions about the local plan subcommittee minutes? No? Right, in which case, we'll just receive those. It's been proposed by Councillor O'Brien. Can I have a seconder, please? Yes, Councillor G, thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Any against? No? Abstentions? 1, yes, right. Okay, thank you. Biodiversity subcommittee. That was on the 18th of April, and that's on page 15. So, any comments on those? Can I have a proposer? That's Councillor Slack. Seconded, Councillor Buckler. Thanks very much. Right, all in favour of these being received? Thank you very much. Right, public participation, we haven't got any tonight, so we can move on to interests. Have any members got any interests tonight? Always sounds odd that. Have you got any interests? No, I'm not interested. Right, okay. Questions? There aren't any questions from members. So, item 6. So I think we can move straight on to item 7, Ashbourne Air Quality Management Area Action Plan and Air Quality Monitoring, pages 19 to 126. It's quite a complicated report, I suppose. The first bit is fairly simple, but the statistical side is quite complex. So first of all, can I ask Amanda Goodwill and Karen Carpenter, who's going to lead on this, to introduce this item? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Not a new subject for the committee to consider, but a new personality obviously presenting it, so in the absence of Tim Braun now. So in terms of the report, I think it's quite concise in terms of the information that's conveyed within that in the phase that we're at, but I'd like to just talk to the recommendations and the appendices just briefly. You'll recall that at the last meeting, the 6th of March, we had a postponed meeting in February because of snow, and we reconvened in March to consider that report. As in that intervening period, we received a number of documents which we did share at the point of receipt with members, but just for public record, they're cited in the recommendations. So if you recall, we had the communication from Chris Henning, the Executive Director for Place at the county, on matters raised by the committee around 20-mile-an-hour zones and weight limits within Ashbourne. He provided a paper on that, and that is noted in the appendices. There's also a document from Neil Bennett, who attended the last meeting on the 6th of March. He talked to Chris Henning's document, and if you recall, also took questions from members on other issues within Ashbourne to do with the highways aspect of things. And quickly on the back of that, provided a document around the highways interventions and position statement, which is also attached for record, but was shared at the point of receipt. Moving on from that, you recall at the last meeting, members wished officers to make representation to DEFRA with regard to our being unable to submit a plan at that point in time, the deadline being the 8th of March, on the back of a warning letter from DEFRA. That representation was made by Tim Braun, the then Director of Regulatory Services. That information was received by DEFRA and a response also coming back to us. The content was acknowledged, however, that did not stop the incremental process around the fact that we still don't have a plan submitted for their consideration. In terms of that, we also received a final warning the same day following that communication, which is also attached for your information, but was shared at the point of receipt. And that takes us to our current position. In terms of the report, it gives you a condensed version of that, of where we are. And at 2.4, it talks about two options for members this evening, in theory. One of which is to accept the draft plan put before you tonight at Appendix 4 and submit that to DEFRA, or in the alternative, to make representation a second time if we don't feel we're able to do that. What we would say is that a second representation will not stop the escalation process. The backstop position is the 21st of May, so that's Tuesday next week. If we don't have something with DEFRA by that point in time, it would then be escalated to a Secretary of State direction to the Chief Executive of the organisation. And that may well or may not direct us to submit a plan and take that decision out of our hands as a local authority. What I would also like to draw your attention to is the recommendation at number 5 that's reiterated within the report, to focus your minds on the fact as well that the action plan is a living and breathing document. It isn't a one hit and that's it. It is something that will morph and change over time, and we've already seen that in terms of when we went out to consultation and the various strands of work that are in there to deal with the issues in Ashbourne. Lots of those things, or a great deal of those things, are happening on the ground in Ashbourne or in development with the County Council. And by its very nature, they've moved apart a little bit in terms of ours has stayed still, but yet some of those capital works have by their very nature matured over time, whether that is in terms of how they're going to be realised or in the planning phase, or that they're actually happening. Members wanted the action points within the plan 1 to 3 to be reviewed and brought up to current circumstances. That time and effort from Karen and myself has been put in with colleagues at County to get it to that stage. So the narrative that is in the plan now is representative of where we are now. So that will change over time. However, the key pillars of that action plan will not change. But as with anything, we'll have other updates to give you on that. So I really wanted you to have that in your mind as well, that it is a plan that will develop and mature over time. However, the efficacy of that and what it's focused on doesn't change, but also the arbiter for the plan that we submit, if we choose to do so this evening, the ultimate arbiter for that is DEFRA on the efficacy of that plan. So that will go to their air quality specialists for their consideration, and they will provide a commentary on that basis. So just to hold that in your minds as well. So there are a number of recommendations, and I apologise for that, but it was just to put those in the public domain. So that a number of them relate to the correspondence we've received in that intervening period that were out of time for the previous reports back in February. But the real focus is recommendation 4 and consideration of the action plan. That is a weighted document, but is there for you to read at your leisure. And also recommendation 5, that it is a living and breathing document. You'll be pleased I've got no more to say on it, but we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Amanda. So do the members have any questions either to Amanda or to Karen? Yeah, Councillor Chapman.
Thanks, Chair. Could I ask a question on the letter from DCC? Is that all right? I'm quite bemused by this because it was sort of me that brought it up in the first place. But in Chris Henning's letter, it says determining convenient alternative for talking about the trip length from Ashbourne to Buxton, and it says that the 515 route between Ashbourne and Buxton is approximately 20.5 miles. The most reasonable alternatives are Buxton, Leek, Ashbourne via A50, etc. It says there's 26.5 miles. Buxton, Cranford, Belper, Ashbourne is 39 miles. Well, that's defying the whole thing, really, because the idea wasn't to divert them to come back into Ashbourne. It was to divert them and to go where they are going, which should be going Derby or Manchester. But all these figures from DCC are just taking them round and bringing them back into Ashbourne. So what on earth is that all about? Or am I being thick? Thank you.
Have you anything to say about that, Karen or Amanda?
Well, I think from our perspective, the information is the information from the Highways Authority, so we need to take that as read in terms of their response to this particular matter.
Yeah. It does seem a bit ridiculous, really.
Can I come back? Yeah, exactly that. I mean, the idea behind the Cranford diversion would be traffic going to Derby, Nottingham, Birmingham, etc., not coming back around into Ashbourne. Just spread a bit more around a few other towns, you know. So I just find it really, has somebody misinterpreted this? Because it is quite, you know, it's quite relevant, really, that traffic should be diverted, and these figures are not correct. Simple as that.
That's quite true, yes. Well, thanks for pointing that out, Councillor. Any more questions? Would Councillor Dobbs like to move the recommendations?
I'd be happy to do that, Chair. Thank you. To move the 5 recommendations in the report, if I can find a seconder, and then I'd like to speak to it. Thank you, Amanda. I'd like to thank both Karen and Amanda for the significant effort they've made in preparing this report and the action plan that it contains. Not least in that is the task of taking information supplied by others, for example, ACOM and the County Council, and making it fit the not inconsiderable constraints of the DEFRA template for an air quality action plan. And add to that the fact that these external contributors can require their exact wording to be retained. You may have thought when you read it through that you'd love to dump the text into AI and ask for a less opaque version, and they won't let you do that. It's got to be what they said. It's been a very long journey developing this action plan, over 3 years. However, I think the many concerns that have been voiced in this committee and elsewhere during those years do seem to have resulted in something that's no longer a plan to have a plan, but does now contain some actions that make sense. If it's more modest in its ambition and scope than some would have preferred, the action plan does now come with a comprehensive monitoring system that will enable rapid assessment of its effectiveness. I think that's important, and it ties in with what Amanda said. It's a living document. It will evolve. You'll see in the document too how many measures suggested during the development of the plan have been removed by the relevant authority, that's County Highways, and their reasoning behind it. and this is entirely consistent with their statutory position. However, action plans are required to work, and if they are shown not to afford the required degree of mitigation, then the legislation has measures, as Amanda outlined, that enable the plan to develop so it does work. You'll note too that the Ashbourne Relief Road is mentioned, not because it falls within the timescale of an action plan, but because it is important to clarify that this remains a longer-term goal for this council. From the response to the consultation, it seems that many believed that an action plan was in some way an alternative to the relief road. This was not and never can be the case. This council is entirely supportive of the relief road project, as is stated in the local plan. However, it cannot be emphasised enough that delivery of that road is very much in the hands of the county council and the regional and national funding sources that it can engage. In contrast, the production of an action plan is the responsibility of this council, although almost all of the potentially significant interventions fall within the remit of the county council. And the result of that is before you today. So, although DEFRA hasn't really given us much alternative, I'm confident that we will be in a stronger position with this plan submitted and implemented than without it. And I therefore commend the 5 officer recommendations to members. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dobbs. We're moving to debate now then. Any contributions from other members? Councillor G.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank officers for producing this, and obviously, in order, it's quite clear that I'm going to support this, because we've got to put in this action plan to the government, because we need to protect the name of this council. We don't want the council being slandered in terms of not producing reports like this. And I'd also like to thank all this committee for the work they've done. You can never get anything perfect with this, but I think it's good. And it's good that we're actually going to achieve this, and we should support it tonight.
Ms. Councillor Archer.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, to be fair, Councillor Chapman earlier raised a lot of the points in his question that I was going to make about the concerns about the weight limit being ignored and the discrepancies and inconsistencies in the highways report, which does worry me. I also just wanted again to reiterate some of the stuff that Councillor Dobbs has said. That not in this council, I'm not referring to people in this council, but there are people who seem to be quite high-profile people in the political scene in this area who seem to be trying to deliberately muddy the waters here in terms of what we can do and who's responsible for what. And I think it's been really unhelpful, some of the stuff that I've been reading on other people's sites. So I think I really would like to thank Councillor Dobbs for making it perfectly clear what we are responsible for, what we can do. And to make sure that members of public in Ashbourne and the area understand that and don't start getting confused and saying, why is the district council not supporting a relief road? Why is it trying to bring in other measures? It's just not true. It's simply not true. It's a deliberate, in my opinion, attempt to play political games with something which is very, very serious. We're trying to do our best to protect the residents of Ashbourne and their health. And other people seem to be trying to confuse the residents of Ashbourne and create a political fight where there shouldn't be one. We need to be all working together to try and get the best outcomes for the people of Ashbourne. So thank you for Councillor Dobbs for making that very clear in his statement, and also Councillor Chapman as well for his reference to the Highways report, which also links into that. Thank you.
In that case then, I think we can move to a vote. All in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item. I don't think Rob thought he was going to be presenting this quite so soon in the meeting, but anyway, this is the Household Support Fund. That's item 8, round 5, pages 127 to 134. So, is it? Oh, Simon Bain is going to present this one. Right.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, like the previous report, this isn't a new topic. to this committee. This is Household Support Fund 5, and the previous rounds have also been brought through this committee as well. The spring budget included an announcement concerning the Household Support Fund, but we've been waiting for further details as to when that was coming and how much we would get. And only in the last week have we been advised that the County Council have allocated us some funding, nearly £92,000. In this particular round, Household Support Fund 5, it's a 6-month allocation for the first 6 months of this financial year. As you can see from the report, it's delivered 737 interventions up to this point, with a spending of over £570,000 to support people who are struggling with various financial issues, mainly around the cost of living crisis and other issues in relation to their affordability within housing, and this helps us support those individuals. We look to help people through rent deposits, utility costs, help with essential spends to free up income for household costs, transport costs for people to get to interviews to gain access to accommodation, and payments for housing debt to assist people to stay in stable, affordable accommodation. So it's very critical for us in relation to helping support people who would normally come through our door homeless or threatened with homelessness. So I'm happy to take any questions in relation to the report. Obviously, we're looking to start the spending on this as soon as we can. We're starting to stack up applications now with people wanting to access this funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for that explanation, and thank you for the details in the report, which obviously you can't read out word for word, but it's very comprehensive and self-explanatory, I think. So, any questions of Simon? It's Councillor Slack.
Is he on long list waiting already?
We've not
Yeah.
set out that we're going to get this money because we didn't know how much or when we were going to get it. But yes, we are starting to see people
I'm
who
not
are already
surprised.
wanting to assist us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any further questions? No? Well, can I have a proposer and seconder for this recommendation? Thank you. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Slack, or Councillor Linthwaite, probably. Right, thank you. Right. We're moving to debate in that case then.
Yeah, I am happy to support this because, you know, this is what councils are for, really, isn't it? To help people who have fallen on hard times and, you know, people who really deserve it, because it could happen to any of us, any time. So if we can just help them a little bit, I can fully support this. So, yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor G. These are very hard times with the cost of living crisis and mortgages rocketing. People find it very tough, and sometimes they're job to get round. Do they find any money at the end of the month? So it isn't definitely needed. I think it will be spent, and we'll probably require some more eventually. Thank you, Chair.
Any further contributions? It's easy tonight. So have a vote now. All in favour of the recommendation? A single recommendation. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Right. Thank you very much. So I think you're going to present this, aren't you, Rob?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So one of the more unusual papers I think I brought to committee in my time at Derbyshire Dales. Unusual in that 40 years ago or so, somebody decided to bequeath their property to the council on the death of the beneficiaries of the will that were involved. Yes, it is an unusual situation. There was a tenant in the property at the time it was bequeathed to us, and that person recently passed away. The provisions within the will, as I've set out in the report, state that the property should revert to the council in whose area that the property resides, which of course is the Derbyshire Dales. We've looked at the property in a lot of detail, and you can see from the report the number of people that inspected the property to draw up the list. So I wanted to be very thorough and not come sort of hard-baked with an idea. I wanted you to have the full information. And you can see from the specification the works required and the costs involved. And even having improved the property, it still would not meet the government's minimum standard for energy efficiency, which is a key issue. We would fall foul of the regulator, and the internal arrangements of properties of this age are obviously quite poor, and we would have a very narrow window of people that we would be able to let the property to. So NCHA, as our development and management agent, have given us this advice. We've inspected the property, and it's clear, from a business case, most housing associations would not take this property forward for relet, for modernisation and relet. I've consulted with the parish council because obviously for them it's an issue, and there are a number of second homes and holiday lets already in the village, which is a concern to them. I took them to the property so they could see firsthand the conditions. Again, I wanted to leave no stone unturned, as it were, so they could see the full extent of the works required. And we had a good discussion in the kitchen on a very cold Monday evening, looking at the property, and I've tried to reflect their views in the report. I think for any parish council, they see an asset going, essentially, which is kind of what this is, to something else. Understandably, they would like a proportion of the funding that's released from that asset to be reinvested back into the village. Some of the parish councillors remember Janet Wadsworth at the time, and have reflected on that and said to me, who she was in the village and what she wanted to achieve in the village. And I think based on what they've said, I've incorporated that into the recommendations, because I think it would be sensible to provide some funding to deliver maybe some parish improvements down the line, and they've got ideas as a parish council on what they want to do. So I've set out in the report the key issues. The other thing to bear in mind is I think when the first property was sold, and I don't want to get into that this evening because I have no involvement in that whatsoever, but when that was sold, obviously there was a capital receipt at that time that was put into a trust fund, and that sits alongside the property. So both have come to the council, and both arguably should be set aside for a future provision of affordable housing as close to Overhaddon as possible. So I hope that helps to bring the report to life. I'm happy obviously to answer any questions. I'm sure it will be of interest to members. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Rob, for this quite complex but understandable report, I suppose, in view of the problem this property presents. Councillor G.
Yeah, I will have something to say about this later, but could you just, Rob, enlighten us all and make it clear exactly what the criteria is for the Derbyshire clause, so we understand it fully, for somebody to actually fit into that category? That's one part of the question. The other question is this period of 3 months. If we think this Derbyshire clause is really important, 3 months doesn't seem very long, because, if you put something on the market, 3 months can be gone like that before people have noticed it's for sale. Obviously, there's a lot involved in thinking about buying a property like this, because obviously the council's swaying away from it because of all the work that needs doing to it that's going to cost a huge amount of money. So they're the actual questions.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Yes, so the Derbyshire clause was brought about in relation to former right to buys, essentially. So it's a form of protection for property sold under the right to buy from the mid-80s onwards that restricts who can buy that property. So there are about 850 former right to buys across the Peak District and the Derbyshire area that were sold through the right to buy, and this restricts that occupation or sale from people that have a connection to Derbyshire and the Peak District, National Park, and they have to have a minimum of 3 years connection either through work or residence. So it's not as strong as it might sound, but it does have an impact on values and reduces values slightly. Yeah. So that's the key issue, and that's set out within the deeds of each property. So on sale, that takes place.
Because, so if somebody in Derbyshire came along and expressed an interest or put an offer in to buy this, do they have to actually do that within 3 months? They don't have to actually buy it within 3 months. Is it put an offer in that's accepted within 3 months?
Yes, I think the purpose of the 3 months came through the consultation with the parish council and other members. So the purpose is to try and give some opportunity to people that are local. Because one of the things the parish council want to achieve is definitely not to become a second home, but equally to create a home that people might move into and provide, for the village. So we're trying to not quite put a square peg in a round hole, but it's not the easiest, it's not the best mechanism, but it's the only mechanism we've got to try and restrict occupation, but at the same time give people with a reasonable amount of time to come up with an opportunity, a solution to finance.
And once that 3 months has gone, that it opens it up to the rest of the world, as it were.
Yes, but we would retain the clause that meant it could be used, only could be used as the primary home.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Yes, Councillor O'Brien.
I mean, just for absolute clarity on the point I think Councillor G is making, that I don't think we're suggesting that the sale should be completed within 3 months. I think we're being a little bit more flexible. There has to be a genuine interest. It's, we are clear it's not completion within the 3 month period. Rob?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thanks, Matt. Is there a housing needs survey completed to say there's a demand there, and are there any sites realistically going to come available in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, we did it's referenced in the report, we did a survey in paragraph 4.2 in 2020 that only identified one person. We have to be honest, it's not the biggest village in the Peak District, and we have previously provided 2 properties there before, probably at least 15 years ago. So we wanted to, I think I probably at the time got wind that this might be coming along, and I thought, we ought to do a parish needs survey to see what the opportunities are going forward. Having said that, there aren't many, there's only 2 affordable homes in the village, so for people who live in the village, it's very difficult to put their name down on the housing register for something that might never happen. So this kind of event might hopefully galvanise residents to think, actually, there is a purpose to filling in the form. And so we've re-engaged our rural housing enabler with the parish, who are keen to support us now. And so that may throw up more need. And we've got an inkling at this stage that there might be some opportunities, development opportunities, not in my pipeline or the council's pipeline, but in somebody else's pipeline that might end up being something we can take advantage of. That's probably the most I can say at the moment. But like all these things, we're on a conveyor belt trying to create opportunity, and it eventually leads to something. And we hope that can lead to something in Overhaddon.
I think the aspiration should be to build it there as soon as possible. But what I didn't want was the money to be tied up there. If there was no chance of that happening in the foreseeable future, we may be better to deploy it elsewhere.
I think that's, because what we don't want is to have a bag of money in Karen's office, essentially, that is for Overhaddon, and then people forget about it, and in 10 years' time, it's still stuck in our capital programme, and we've all forgotten what it was about. So there'll always be access to funding, whether it's through us or the Homes England or the Housing Association. So we need to get things built and opportunities to happen, because that creates more confidence and brings more opportunity. It doesn't have to be solely ring-fence Overhaddon, in my view.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Nash to propose. Councillor Dobbs to second. Thank you.
Yeah, my feeling about this is that, from what I read from this report, this house is obviously a difficult situation, and it comes across how difficult it is in terms of the property itself. It's come to this council as an asset, and we can see the huge amount of cost involved. It's a small 2 up, 2 down in Overhaddon, which is quite a rural village. You know, I go up to Overhaddon, I go to the parish council. And I'd also like to say that on my visits to the parish council, when this discussion's come up, the parish council isn't completely unanimous in terms of being against holiday lets, etc., because at least 2 of the members were speaking up for the reason why some properties have gone over to holiday lets, because they kind of lend themselves to that type of situation, because they're not big enough for family homes and they've got a lot of problems, so people tend to come in and invest in them, and that's why they've ended up being holiday lets. And because we've been gifted this asset to the council, and our aspiration is to actually put money into these projects that we've already got, which are probably better projects, it'd be more logical to just sell this property to the highest bidder without any restrictions. If we can get 220,000, then you put it into one of your projects that will actually provide affordable housing for somebody in a more swift manner. So I'd be going towards that. Put these restrictions, you've already got restrictions of it being really difficult. Are you really going to get somebody local who is looking for an affordable house, who's willing to spend 180,000 to buy it, and then they're faced with another bill of upwards of 120, 150,000, 300,000 pounds? I just don't think so.
Thanks, Chair. I think you've handled this absolutely spot on, Rob. You've been pragmatic about it, and we've also putting the Derbyshire clause on for a temporary period is really a good move, because it doesn't look as if we're trying to just blindside it and move it on to anybody, because it's not depriving somebody with that condition that would want to buy it. So nobody can say we've just put it onto the open market just because it's going to be a second home or a holiday let, because we've covered that as well. And I think you've taken the right path, and I think it's absolutely right, and I fully support this.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking through the list of works required and smiling to myself. My first cottage had a very similar list to this, and I certainly didn't pay tradesmen to do it all. Friends, Dad, DIY and tradesmen, we got through it. So I think to keep this out of the second home or the holiday cottage market is essential, because there will be first-time buyers in Monash or Bakewell or Ashover or in our local community. There are young people who have these skills or who have friends who will do it at mates' rates. And I think if we allow it to go into the general market, they will miss that opportunity, because they absolutely can take advantage of it. Thank you.
Yes, I want to agree 150% with the comments made by Councillor Linthwaite and Councillor Chapman. I think it's we as representatives from villages like Overhaddon are constantly approached by local residents, appreciating that the work the council does to support the provision of affordable rented housing, but pointing out that there's no further rung on the ladder. If you want to move up the housing ladder, to move on from your first social rented house to acquire a modest terraced house, you cannot do it. Every time a property of this nature comes onto the market, it is someone from the more affluent, normally southern areas of the country that acquires it. And people from the locality in Derbyshire are simply priced out of the market. And this is a very small, a very sensitive way that we can demonstrate as a council we understand that problem and we're doing something about it. Now, Derbyshire clause is not a panacea, it's not a perfect solution. We're not able to make it more locationally restrictive than Derbyshire, because the legislation doesn't allow it. allow us to. But it is the council showing its commitment to providing accommodation, providing a step on the housing ladder for families looking to set up their first new home. So I thank you, colleagues, for your support there. And again, I fully support this recommendation, and I thank Director of Housing and his team for the very sensitive and pragmatic way they've approached this issue.
Yeah, the first step of getting onto the housing ladder is really hard. And with my CLT hat on, we rent lots of houses, but lots of those tenants come to us and say, what can we do to buy houses around here, or even buy the houses they're in? And it's always really difficult to say, we can't help you at the moment. I understand the Derbyshire clause can't be minimised, but can we do anything about, we can choose who we sell it to. Can we make a priority that if local people apply, that we sell it to them before we sell it to someone from outside the area?
As you've invited me into the debate, Chair, I can contribute, but I'll have to check that because behind some of this, I'm sure there's a need to get best value as well. But I'm hearing the mood in the room, so I'll take that away, obviously, and when I talk to legal about disposal, we'll try and find that in there somewhere.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with all the previous speakers said. I'm afraid, Councillor G. It is essential that we got the Derbyshire clause in this property. We need to hold these houses for local people. And, you know, if this was on the open market, somebody would be in straight away from down south and buy it up, and then it would become a holiday let, and that's another one gone. And it's constantly happening in our villages, on and on and on. And I do agree with the 100% council tax coming to stop it, but it won't entirely stop it. We need planning altering completely, so planners can take control of the area. But maybe a next government will do that, hopefully. So, yeah, this is right to do this, and definitely right. People deserve this, and I do hope somebody from the locality, a young couple, trying to start their first home in that area, comes and buys it. So I do agree with this totally. Thank you, Chair.
Retort to that, because when I made my input earlier, I wasn't per se against the Derbyshire clause. The point is I wanted to make sure that we maximise the potential for this council, monetary terms, towards its projects on affordable housing. And the other thing is, if somebody does move in from outside and they buy a house and they become a resident, the day after they are a Derbyshire resident. So, you know, it works both ways, doesn't it? There's a lot of people who've moved out of Derbyshire to other areas and people move in. But the Derbyshire clause sounds good if it works. I think the time limit's a bit short. If I'm honest, 3 months doesn't sound very long, because after 3 months, you're straight into... But, I mean, Derbyshire's quite big. You might want to move from, you know, sort of Sandy Acre to Ashford in the Water or whatever. So, you know, you might want to move, you know, to Overhaddon. But it's just, to me, it's getting the best potential we can from the assets that come to us, which are quite few and far between, to make sure that... I'm sure Rob's got a lot of projects that you need money for. And, you know, where they're probably ones that you can put online quickly that are there for people to benefit people. So that I just wanted to clarify that point.
Yeah, in some ways I'm going to agree with Councillor G, whilst I agree with everybody else on everything else as well. I think the point 1A is particularly important. It's preventing its use as a second holiday home in perpetuity, rather than the Derbyshire clause, because there are people who are moving into the area who can't afford to buy houses either. And so I think that the point about if you listen to my accent, I'm not from Derbyshire, And I hope that I've made a valuable contribution. And so I think it's whilst I'm quite happy for the Derbyshire clause to be there for 3 months, point 1A is more important as far as I'm concerned.
I was a bit shocked when I saw the figures. Over a quarter of the properties in this small village are now second homes and holiday lets, no doubt Airbnbs, people with money, making money. And really, this is happening throughout the Peak District National Park, village after village. The village I was born in, the same things happened. I get really quite annoyed about what I think of as modern day clearances, basically, in the Peak District National Park. There aren't enough people now even living in the Peak Park who can maintain these holiday homes. People are being bussed in from Sheffield to do the domestic changeovers. We've got to find a way of turning this around, putting reasonably priced homes, some of these terrace cottages back in the hands of local people, young local people, providing them with starter homes, making those opportunities. And alongside that, we've also got to seriously think about employment opportunities for people within the Peak Park, for local people, local residents, and not just those associated with tourism, like cleaning jobs and catering jobs on minimum pay. We've got to try somehow to improve the lot of local people throughout the Dales, but particularly in the Peak District National Park.
Can I just say that, was it last year or the year before, when we were door knocking for the Carsington by-election, we were in the village of Brassington. Some of us were quite shocked to hear then that there were 40 cottages in Brassington that were holiday lets. And that was obviously annoying to the locals. I think we spoke to a couple of parish councillors, and it was very annoying to them that that was the situation. But you could recognise these houses as you walk round, as you have a pair of cottages almost identically decorated, and obviously fancy bits of stuff in the window to make it look as if it was occupied all the year round, but not so. So if that's obviously replicated throughout the area, which it presumably is, then a lot of, as you say, quite a few of the viable properties for young people particularly are disappearing. And otherwise, Brassington is a fairly sustainable village because it's got a school, for instance. I think it might have a shop as well. But that sort of thing is not really acceptable, I don't think, because obviously young people are not finding properties to buy or even to rent in that village. So, any further contributions, or shall we move to a vote? 34% of the houses in Harting. Really? Yeah, that's quite remarkable, is it really? Okay, and we move to a vote then. All in favour of the recommendations 1 to 4? Thank you. Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And that actually concludes the meeting. It's been an all-time record, I think. But and don't forget the next meeting of this committee is 2 weeks tonight. That's the actual Community Environment Committee. This is an extraordinary one, so we hope